We'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you every Friday here at TFS. That foreign show. We'll be seeing you on that foreign show. We'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you every Friday here at TFS. That foreign show. We'll be seeing you on that foreign show. We'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you every Friday here at TFS. That foreign show. We'll be seeing you on that foreign show. We'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you every Friday here at TFS. That foreign show.
ADR Networks presenta.
This is Celestine Angel.
And I'm Isaac Crouch.
And this is...
Foreign Show!
On that foreign show.
What it do, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to That Foreign Show. I am Isaac Rakesh, and this is ADR Networks. We are activating your senses. We're gonna jump straight in. I want to talk about our insider segment today, all right? And we have this. I'm gonna hold this up. I don't know if you guys can check this out. Now, I want to talk about this very special association, the Choy Lee Fut Kung Fu, all right? If you want to learn Kung Fu, these are the guys you have to go to, all right? There, we just did a celebration over there, Chinese New Year celebration. Yeah, it was real fun. Thank you for coming down, those of you that actually came down, not into the scene.
So yeah, actually we are mentioning this Choy Lee Fut Kung Fu Association, but the main thing that we wanted to introduce is the the clinic for traditional Chinese medicine. So he does the Shifu, which is master or teacher in Chinese. He does like physiotherapy, and we like had the opportunity to see him in action.
And on work, on Carrick.
Yeah, on my brother Carrick, and it gave Carrick relief. And I think he needs to go for further sessions, but the way he was handling it, it felt really good. And basically what the guys were telling us is that this Shifu, he's not Chinese, but he really follows like all the traditional things very well, and like he even has the kung fu school, like what we were saying and everything. And like even Chinese people go to him for consultation. So I think he is doing like physiotherapy in the Chinese style, which, like we have to mention, in Asia is like the main physiotherapy that people go to is to the Chinese guys, to these old Chinese uncles, and
Yes,
they
you gotta get the
they do
Chinese
it.
uncle.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what you need to get. You need to get the guy with the wooden. He's got this whole wooden setup. Wooden drawers, a whole cabinet of wooden drawers, and then it's like small drawers. Then you know you're in the right place. Because the dude is like, okay, let me. This is what you need, and he puts in like
Sure.
10 to 12 different things, and then small drawers and stuff. That's the place. All right, so
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a bit about kung fu. All right, and with regards to the association that we were talking about, right? The Choy Lee Fut Hung Sing Guan. Now, this is based off a master who has a traditional line of disciples leading up to the fifth, leading up to the sixth generation right now of disciples of this family, the Chan family, or in Cantonese, the Choy Lee Fut family. And the Choy Lee Fut family organized the Chinese New Year event that Celestine and I were a part of
Last week.
last week. Yeah, really beautiful event.
Yeah, there
And
were like lion dance, dragon dance, kung fu. They have all the works, and like it's like, of course, a higher percentage of people there were Mexican, but they were really really into the all of these traditional cultural things of Chinese people. So it was very impressive.
almost in a way that we're not very familiar with, as in they're really into it, and it's a part of their culture, obviously, and because of that, they bring their own mix to it, and it shows in the lion dance and stuff. Yeah, the ceremony we did was the dotting of the eye ceremony.
For the dragon.
The dotting of the dragon.
We've never
Yeah.
seen that before.
Yeah.
I mean, we're from Asia, but we're from Singapore, very modern. So like, yeah, we have all that. We have dragon dance, lion dance, all that. When new establishments are open, to basically call in the luck, drive out the bad energy.
That's the whole idea, right?
Huh.
That noise thing, and in fact, it's a common thing in the cultures, even the local cultures here have their own version of making a lot of noise, what they call kind of warding off the evil or lower vibration, bad energy, stagnant spirits away, ushering new stuff. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, the cultural links. Speaking of cultural links, on today's show we have Alysha Bagasra. All right, she is a New Zealander. She is a diplomat, and she joins us right now. What's up?
Hello, looking
welcome to the show.
beautiful.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Hi, nice to be here.
Thank you for
Could we
joining
raise
us.
the volume a little?
Yeah, right here.
Sorry, just adjusting to hear you
All
better.
right. So as you were saying, the life of a diplomat here in Mexico, and a New Zealander at that. So there she is. All right.
Yeah, so we have plenty of questions for you.
Yes, y'all.
As
Let's get it on.
we have so many questions about being a diplomat, what it means, what it entails.
Yeah. So yeah, right off the bat, I mean, it's basically you are a government official, right?
Correct. The first answer you got correct, Isaac. So well done.
Okay. Let me take note of that.
So I mean, like before you were deployed here to Mexico, you were already working for the government in New Zealand. So okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So basically, most diplomats, not all, it can be a bit flexible, but most of us start at the Foreign Affairs Ministry back at home. So yeah, we're government employees. Before that, I also worked for the government. So you've just got a lifetime government employee here on your show. And I moved to Foreign Affairs, and then you work in Capital. It depends on how long. I did 2 years in Capital, which is Wellington in New Zealand.
Okay.
And then I applied to go out on posting. So it is a competitive, for us at least, it's a competitive process. You have to apply, you have to do interviews. And
stages to get your position, right?
Pardon?
You went through many stages to get to your position.
Exactly. So basically, you do a written application, you do an interview, you try to talk to as many people as you can, so they know who you are.
Right.
Mm.
And you do a lot of research as well. You do a lot of
Mhm.
So if you were choosing to, I mean, from the start to be in the foreign affairs, and then after that choosing to go and posting, so is it safe to say you're always kind of looking to kind of do something outside or away from, your home station?
Yes, I think that's the assumption. So most people who want to work for foreign affairs, I think always have this curiosity about the world, about living overseas, about different cultures. So I would say yes, and it's also quite a competitive environment, right? So you're all kind of vying for the same roles, and it becomes exciting. It becomes something that a lot of people really want. And absolutely. So I think there's definitely that element of being out in the world.
Right. So right now, being in Mexico, is this your second time being away from home? Because I mean, I know that originally you're from Mumbai. And how old were you when you moved to New Zealand?
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah, but
you,
your screen was kind
but
of
it was
frozen.
laggy, yeah, for a
Yeah.
while.
Okay, let me know if it cuts off for
Yeah.
any reason. So good question. So yeah, I was born in Mumbai, but my family immigrated to New Zealand when I was really young. So I was only 5. So really all my memories are from New Zealand. So I
Right.
would say this is the first time I've lived overseas, and it's Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah, I had traveled a bit. So I think I'd done like a couple of longer stints of travel, sort of like 2 to 3 months, 1 month here and there. But really being away for this long and actually living in a different country, it's the first time that I've ever done that.
So right now, how long have you been here already?
So I've been here for 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So not as long as you guys, but pretty long for me.
This year you are going to move to I mean you're going back home, right? To New Zealand. You'll be finishing your stint here.
Exactly. So basically, another really unique thing about diplomatic life is you kind of get told what to do. I think some people find that really interesting because other people, if you're in a job, you kind of get to shape your career. You get to decide when you move somewhere, when you finish somewhere. But for us, it's quite interesting. You basically get told, okay, this is the day you're arriving. This is the day you're leaving. And this is where you're going. So yeah, I've been given my Hey?
You kind of represent in a way like say, okay, you're a diplomat from New Zealand, and your presence here in Mexico is kind of like the New Zealand government's handshake to Mexico, right?
I think that's the best way I've heard diplomacy being described, Isaac. Like that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a lot of different things. It can be really complicated to put in a sexy elevator pitch. But essentially, I was so interesting. I was doing a speech at a school last week. And I was trying to explain to these little kids what an embassy does. And I said exactly that. I said, basically, the embassy works so New Zealand and Mexico can keep being friends and hopefully become best friends. So it's really to maintain friendly foreign relations. And, not everything is positive always in diplomacy, but I think the kind of key of diplomacy is that you kind of have the dialogue going, communication going. And so I think like back in the old days, it used to be so you don't have to resort to conflict or war.
Right.
And that's what we do at the embassy.
So for us Singaporeans, we don't have an embassy like right here.
Yes.
We yes. We only have a consulate.
Yeah.
So the reason being we assume is that there are not enough Singaporeans here to have an embassy. But yeah, do you have more insight for us so we have more info about this?
Yeah, like okay, so I guess like what would okay. So if if a Mexican or foreigner in Mexico is interested in life in New Zealand, I mean, talking to the embassy would make sense, right?
Yes and no. Like, so basically going to Celestine, your question, there is a slight difference between an embassy and a consulate.
Mm-hmm.
They're similar, but in terms of basically, this is going to be quite interesting, I think, for people listening. All of this stuff is actually covered by international law. So there's actually a legal document called the Convention that lays out the functions of an embassy and the functions of a consulate. So my understanding.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was what I was kind of leading up to, like the difference, between the two. Huh?
Exactly. So a consulate is more focused on kind of what you were saying, Isaac, like dealing with the people element. So
Right.
dealing with, helping, hopefully, your Singaporean citizens in Mexico, somewhere where you can go for advice.
No, yeah, shout out to the Singapore consulate. Very helpful. Really.
Hope so. And, obviously assisting Mexicans who are interested in Singapore, business, culture, you guys are musicians as well. That's a big part of diplomatic relations, cultural diplomacy. An embassy has all those functions, but also has like more political stuff. So we have an ambassador, and a consulate doesn't have an ambassador. So we have a political person who can go in to talk to the Mexican government directly and talk to quite senior people in the Mexican government. We follow more. A consulate also does maybe a bit more economic stuff. We do a lot of political work as well. So there's a slight, basically an embassy is like a consulate on steroids. It has more things. Yeah.
Okay.
No, and the part that you mentioned, doing 2 years, needing to do 2 years in finance, right? That's part of the journey. I mean, so I guess that whole part is really important as well, right? For you guys,
Yeah.
so what I guess the work that you do is also
Related to
finance and
how does that?
has economic repercussions as well, right? Like,
Yeah. So when I said 2 years in head office, that's not necessarily finance. It can be anything.
all right, okay.
Actually, though, and we do have an economic division. We have a trade division. So you're right. It's very broad. And the reason why we move around or expected to move around is so we can develop quite a general understanding of all of these things. Right. So my 2 years in Wellington, actually, I was working in international climate change policy in multilateral negotiations. So I was in the UN and basically dealing with 196 other countries to agree international climate law. So that's like really interesting. And I have other colleagues who do more economic work, colleagues who do more sort of development work as well. So working in Asia and the Pacific on more development economic policy. So it can be pretty much anything.
Right.
I see. Like, basically,
I mean, I'm just that's really interesting. I mean, I don't know, like I'm just thinking of scenarios where, but let's not get into that. No, let's not get into that. Okay, weird stuff. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
No, so basically, like, I mean, we already know that, like, our consulate, and so right now you have just explained to us why we don't have an ambassador here. Like, how come we don't have an ambassador?
The whole,
like, he came, like, we had a dinner with our ambassador who is never here. He came like last year in September, just for a month. So we were like, okay, how we have an ambassador, but he's not here.
And he actually had, we held the event in one of our insider spots as well.
Yeah, Makan.
Right. So
I actually also met your ambassador when he was here in September.
You did?
We did. Well, New Zealand and Singapore were friends.
Very nice. Very nice.
We met at an event, and I went and introduced myself to him because I know he's not here, right? So you don't get the chance very often.
Right.
And he's like, I love rugby. I love the All Blacks.
Super down to earth kind of person, right? Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting case. So yeah, you have an ambassador, but he's not resident in Mexico. So that must be another kind of interesting little arrangement you have. That's probably somewhere in the convention. But so you clearly have diplomatic relations with Mexico. So you have the relationship at that level, because that's why you have the non-resident ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a step up actually from just having a consulate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, so is it like I don't know if you know this, but is it because we have too little Singaporeans here, or some other thing altogether?
We probably
That's
know Singaporeans, like, yeah.
To be honest, I know more Singaporeans here than I do New Zealanders. So I'm thinking maybe it's not always the case. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it really depends on, I mean, you guys can relate. Like, we're small countries. Like, our populations are small.
Yeah.
And so we have to be quite careful. Like, having an embassy operation somewhere is like really expensive.
Mm.
So it's kind of also about what your country's priorities are in a host country. So, for example, with Mexico, we have a friend in common. He works for the trade office. And so clearly Singapore has decided that there's more interest in that commercial relationship.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on there. Yeah. So it's not always about the numbers. Sometimes it's also about what the country's priorities are. So, for us, we have 3 diplomats in Mexico. Like, for such a big country, that's very small. The Americans have 2,000 employees.
Well, to understand this, because I'm an idiot about it, but like when you are a diplomat, you're not the ambassador, right? I mean, like what roles, like what do you do? Like, are you specializing in the PR aspect or what? Like, yeah, can we?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we'd all love to be the ambassador to get invited to lots of nice lunches and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. So again, really good question. Really tough for an elevator pitch, because again, it also super depends. Like, for example, I know that there's a diplomat in the American embassy that only looks after veteran statues, war memorial statues. Like, that's super specific, right? So I guess I can tell you a little bit about what I do, just as a general sort of idea. So I am second secretary, and that's basically a diplomat rank. So it's a very hierarchical kind of profession. So you can kind of tell how senior someone is depending on what their rank is. I was just talking to a diplomatic colleague, and he used to work in the army, and he said that he thought that the diplomacy world was actually more hierarchical than the army. And I was like, wow. But yeah, so basically, because we're such a small operation in the New Zealand embassy, we can kind of decide what to cover. And I cover lots of things, right? Because there's no way that we have enough people to cover every little thing. So I cover, I think probably Singapore office is similar. Like, we don't have embassies in all these other little countries south of Mexico. So I also cover the whole diplomatic relations with Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, Cuba. In Mexico, because I have the climate change and environment background, I cover environment and energy policy. So I do a lot of reporting on what's happening in that space here. And also I support the trade office if there's a company interested as well.
So,
Yeah.
so you have meetings with the Mexican government here to improve all these topics, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, improve is a bit of a sensitive word, because it really depends on what your country's interests and priorities are.
Right.
Okay, so just
but yeah,
to get your objectives.
Just looking for a handshake, that's it,
Yeah, exactly. I'm not offending anyone. Yeah, so basically I'm meeting with, we're talking to the Mexican government on gender equality policy, climate policy. There's also something, the random stuff as well that I really like, kind of social and cultural stuff. So one of the projects I'm really excited about is I also work on Indigenous culture and language and music, and how New Zealand can kind of work with Mexico. So we're publishing a book in a couple of weeks that showcases an Indigenous New Zealand artist. He's a rapper and hip hopper, and he raps in the Indigenous language of New Zealand.
Sorry, can you give me a sec, right? Sorry.
No worries.
No, it's over here. Like.
Okay. No, there is nothing there.
And okay, sorry, you're saying he raps in his indigenous language. Uh-huh.
Exactly. And so we're publishing a book where he's kind of featured talking about his journey, kind of like fighting against colonialism in New Zealand, and how him rapping in his indigenous language is like a way to him empower his language. And we've partnered up with some people here who are Mexicans, indigenous Mexicans from all different parts of Mexico,
Uh-huh.
also making music in their indigenous language.
Wow.
And so that is super interesting. And you're doing it together with is that the New Zealand rapper together with the Mexican one, or is that two separate? Oh, that's so interesting. If you're doing it together.
Your job, like you, as in, it's so cool because you can effect change in the world. Like the creativity in what you're doing is like you can see what like can be improved. Okay, let's not use that word.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know where I'm going with
Affect
this. So
change.
cool, yeah.
Affect change without such a strong agenda, or without an agenda. Like just kind of like
globally.
yeah, right.
And then you collect information where you're at, and then like everywhere you go, you can actually make a
No, I mean
difference.
there always will be an agenda, right? There should be an agenda, like a focus, right?
Yeah,
and
objective.
it can be collective good, and
No,
not together.
absolutely.
Yeah, and
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's the aspiration. I think most people who kind of want to do this job, I think their aspiration is to make positive change. Because it is, and I know what you mean about the agenda thing, Isaac. Like, yeah, it's not like we're a corporation or a company and we have like a specific kind of economic agenda.
Yeah.
It's broader than that. It's more about, the government, the values, what New Zealand public kind of believe in. So I really think, and we don't have heaps of money. It's all taxpayers' money. We have to be very careful about how we spend it. But that's also nice to be able to support projects that we think make a real difference in the communities in Mexico and Central America. And so I think that's the aspiration. I think sometimes it can be difficult because you feel bogged down in bureaucracy. Like you are working for this government machine wherever you are.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of paperwork and processes, and I think sometimes
lead up to this question that I have, and that's good. Right. So how do your superiors or your department? I mean, how is it decided that a particular person is doing a good job? Or
Right.
better job than the previous person? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, we're really big on that, like performance ratings and reviews. But again, it's done in a very bureaucratic way. Like there's like a matrix and you've got your different, I guess, capabilities. So, Alysha's good at influencing, or she's good at budget management or project management, or she's good at writing, So basically your manager goes down and ranks you, and then there's a bit of a moderation process because they're trying to make sure that they account for bias and they're trying to make sure that it's fair. But overall it's it's a bureaucratic process. Like I think for me, I shouldn't say this, so I hope my boss isn't listening, but it doesn't really matter about that stuff on paper for me. Like for me it's more about like, if people that you're working with, your partners in the Mexican government, or for example, these musicians that we're working with, or, the school that I went to and the kids were all clapping and really excited, like that kind of stuff is when I think, okay, I think I'm doing a good job. Or, I write a report on some political development and someone replies saying that was super useful. Like that's the kind of stuff.
If I was the one doing your grid, this would be an extra another segment, another line, and it'll be like emotional intelligence, or you know what I'm saying? Yeah, things like that, which are completely necessary
in your line.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And actually, something that when you said that, Isaac, like cultural kind of intelligence and competency is really big in our jobs, and I only think it's just starting to be recognized. Like if you're this little person from little New Zealand and you're popped in the middle of like Ethiopia, like,
Right.
or something really different, or even with Mexico, like different language, different culture. It's like you need to be able to navigate that in a respectful way. And I think that's something as well that is really important in the job.
So, like, when this job ends, your plan is to go into higher studies. You're not continuing with like diplomatic work anymore.
I mean, I think being a diplomat is kind of for life, like, and it always used to be, because it is such an interesting career. But yeah, I'm keen to take a sabbatical, and many people have done that. And yeah, keen to take a bit of a break and upskill, because I think also in jobs, and I think all jobs, when you do like an office or a corporate job,
I hope your
you
boss is listening. Go ahead, sorry.
you learn a lot, and I've learned heaps, but I kind of want to get it on paper, if that makes sense, and have a bit more time to really delve deeply into something. Because, like I was telling you guys before, we do all sorts of things. It's quite broad.
So the
That's
reason why
so
you want
interesting.
to go take your master's right now is because you have been learning a lot and you want to actually put it. Well, that's really cool.
Exactly.
I like
Make it
that
official. Yeah.
process.
Yeah, why not? Why not, right?
Yeah.
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 I mean, the whole, generally speaking, 1 year sabbatical from college or university, it's like sometimes, different people do different things, right? And yeah, different outcomes, sometimes some people choose to do something where you get something at the end of it, like something to say the
No,
least. Or, yeah, what do you think?
well, I never did a sabbatical. Like, this is the first time, like, I was on the rat race. When you're young and when you're from Asian parents, I'm sure you guys can relate.
Totally. Yeah.
Parents are like, don't take a gap year because then you'll never go back to university. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not just going to like live on the street, guys. Like, so yeah, it was very much like, no, once you finish high school and you do university, and then, you do university and then you're in debt. Like, I don't know how it is in Singapore, but it's super expensive in New Zealand. And so then you have to get a job to pay that off. And so I finally feel like after 10 years of working, I'm, paid off my debt, and I can finally be like, look, I can take a sabbatical for myself. And, we're multifaceted. Like, I feel like sometimes with jobs, and particularly like the diplomatic career, the line becomes a bit faint between who you are as a person and your job.
Right.
Right.
Here for work.
Like,
And
so identity as a diplomat and that kind of thing.
exactly. And so I'm just like, okay, it'll be nice to just take a step back and reevaluate. Also, do the learning and have that intellectual stimulation that I'm really keen to have, but also, take a step back and kind of figure out what my purpose is, what my values are. Do I want to keep going with this? Do I want to try something else? And I think maybe sometimes we don't stop ourselves enough to like ask those questions. And when you're stuck in the 9-to-5 grind, sometimes longer, it's difficult to have that time and space.
That's so true, right?
Yeah. So like we should definitely like get into some questions about like how it has been here in Mexico. I mean, you said it's your first experience overseas. So like, what are the differences
Yeah.
between living in New Zealand and Mexico, and how have you like enjoyed yourself here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, what a time to go overseas for the first time to live in August 2020. Like, where the world is just like in the throes of this pandemic. Like, no one knows what's going on. My initial flight to Mexico was in April 2020 and had actually got canceled altogether.
Wow.
So, it was a very really stressful period, because I was in New Zealand and we didn't have COVID back then. And so it was like, woof, you're off to the other side of the world, the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and good luck, And I'm just like, oh my God. It's kind of how it was, to be honest. Like, they were just like, see ya. Yeah.
It's mostly cheap, right? Like I have to put it in there.
Oh man,
So it was a pretty traumatic time. I think it's different Yeah, it was very traumatic because I basically was alone. So, other diplomats go with their partners, go with their families. I didn't have a partner and I don't have kids. So I was alone, a single officer. And I arrived in Mexico and our embassy was closed. We were working all online. I think the Singaporean consulate was the same. And everyone was mostly working online. I didn't have any friends here. I didn't know anyone here before I moved here. I wasn't even meeting my colleagues in person. I was basically like at home by myself every day. And when you get to the point where you like feel yourself going a bit crazy, like I could kind of feel that happening to me.
Right. You were so isolated, plus
Right.
completely another country and all that. Wow, sounds crazy.
It was pretty great. And luckily, you guys were here in Mexico too. Like we didn't have the lockdowns, the super strict lockdowns. So I think that was super, you could still go out for a walk and you could still, depending on the people, but if people were comfortable, you could like meet people like in the fresh air, go for a walk, have a coffee. Yeah. So I tried to do that a bit. I really initially relied a lot on some of those foreigner groups. So Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups to not just connect with people, but also advice. Like, does anyone know, where I can go to the dentist? Just those like really basic things that you just take for granted when you live somewhere and they're a new place and you're like, I don't really know anywhere. So yeah, it was, I would say, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And it would have been hard anyway without the pandemic, but I think the pandemic then added that. But I think I remember, I don't know how it was for you guys, but I remember an old manager back when I started my career. And he told me, it takes a good 2 years to really lay down your roots somewhere after you move there.
Wow.
Right. Do you feel like you've laid down your roots? Like now you're 2.5 years, right?
Yes. And I do feel like that. Finally, I feel like I live here, I have my community here, and I've actually got my roots down here.
Yeah, and it's funny.
That's really interesting. That I think it's very true. 2 years kind of feels like something is.
And the funny thing is always that like when you feel that you've laid down your roots, that's when you're going to leave, right?
Yeah, that usually happens.
Yes.
You know where the dentist is, where all the like, the good deals are, like all the stuff that you like, and then next minute you're
exactly. And I feel like exactly what you just touched on, Celestine, is what is not talked about enough in this career. Like when you just feel like you've just got somewhere, and you feel happy and you feel like you've got your community and your friends and where all the good tacos are. And then you just like rip, if you use the root analogy, like you've got your roots nice and comfortable and you're like ripped out. And that's also quite traumatic. So I'm also thinking a little bit about, it's a source of quite a lot of anxiety, for sure. And while I'm excited about what my next step might be, I'm not sure about that yet. So there's a lot of uncertainty, anxiety, and also like trying to raise awareness within my own ministry, right? Like within this career, like this is something that actually we need to be supported through, because it's not just, I also think sometimes people think about the diplomatic life as this like amazing, glamorous thing. And it has a lot of great perks, right? But when you're just like constantly moving and forced to move, and you're like making all these friends, then you're just like ripped away from them.
So what is the reason that they just give you like 2 years to be at a place and then they move you? Like, why don't they want you to be there for longer?
It's actually something super specific to the diplomatic career. Like it can be between 3 to 4 years for us, maximum 5 if you're learning a language beforehand.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But very specific. I know some embassies and some other ministries, like I've met someone who'd been here for 7 years because they kept extending, but that's unusual.
Okay.
Because they want you to be a generalist, and also they don't want it to become too, this is my theory, and I think it makes sense. Like they don't want the relations and stuff to become too personal. Because it's really, you're an institution, you're a government. And so having that like churn, you get new energy, you get different ideas, it is for our benefit.
I was gonna ask you this question, but then it's kind of moot now because of what you just said.
Yeah.
And this thing about like in each new place, the networks, the personal networks of people or businesses that you know. I mean, I don't know if there's some way to kind of join that with your professional life or professional networks, and and then it wouldn't be so uh, traumatic when
you leave.
time comes to move. But then you just said that yeah, they don't really want that happening, right?
Exactly, but it's so difficult. Like, and then even the worst thing as well is, even when you're here, your friends move. Like, I'd made a really great friend at the Indian embassy, British embassy, and you're kind of coincide with them for a certain amount of time, and then they have to leave. So it's just basically, I mean, I always describe diplomatic life as a constant stream of like meeting new people, and saying goodbye to people.
Right, you're like the perfect foreigner, like for this show. You're like you're.
Well, I hope, Alysha, that we are not just another two people in that stream of people that you know what I mean. And yeah,
And I think exactly what you just described is why sometimes I have doubts about this career, because my personality isn't like that. I like really getting intense, and my friendships are really really deep,
Yeah.
and I really like to get to know people and appreciate them. And so I don't think that this kind of circular, through the wash is something that is really going to be sustainable for me long term.
but even sustainable for the institutions as well, right? I mean, because if the institutions want true sustainability, they're going to have to actually um, make sure that everyone is happy that's working in the institution, right? Simple as that.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just one of those things, right? Because there's so many pros, and this is a little con. And I think another cool thing about the moving around is also the fact that you always find people again.
Mhm.
No,
And it's
you
fun to like know people from all over the world, and
absolutely.
yeah,
Like,
You find people again, as in they come back into your networks
into
again,
your
right?
path again.
That's so cool, yeah.
yeah.
Like, I mean, since you're an Indian and from New Zealand, I think we should also ask about your experience. Like, I mean, you are originally from Mumbai,
Mhm.
but you moved to New Zealand when you were 5. So, like, you're more of a New Zealander instead of an Indian citizen. But you
Yes.
have visited India like a few times, or do you have relatives right there?
I do. So I've only visited India literally a couple of times, 2 times.
Not much. Okay.
Yeah, because New Zealand, like, it is really far away. And back in the old days, there were no direct flights. It was very expensive. My parents, they weren't loaded with cash. So I always had this I always had this curiosity about like where I was from. And so I went back just before the pandemic. I had just finished up my role at Foreign Affairs, and I was waiting to start my Spanish language training. And I took a month off and backpacked in India. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's
that
amazing.
was cool. I kind of joke about and describe it as like a homecoming trip, finding myself. And it's a bit like cheesy, but it kind of was like that for me.
No.
I don't think it's cheesy at all, to be honest. Yeah.
No, like it's an experience that like I mean it like it might feel cheesy, but like the whole process, I'm sure it gave you a lot of like reflection and stuff, right? Like understanding different things, and yeah.
Absolutely. And like India, it's really different to New Zealand, like even more different than Mexico is to New Zealand. Like, it's crazy, right? It's how different it is. But obviously there are challenges, things aren't like they are back at home. But what really struck me was like how comfortable I felt culturally, being somewhere where everyone looked like me, where like I just fit.
But how did they react to your Kiwi accent? How did they?
Well, yeah, because everyone's like, "Where are you from?" And obviously, you know, like you said, I'm more of a New Zealander, and I have this accent, and I speak English as the first language, and so I would say, "I'm from New Zealand," because I didn't want to be like, "Oh, I'm Indian," right? So I was like, "Oh, I'm from New Zealand," and they're like, "Oh, but you look Indian though." And then I'd be like, "Right, yeah. So let's just tell you my life story now."
But are there a lot of Indians in New
Oh,
Zealand?
Yeah,
What's
there
the
are.
community is big?
Yeah, it's pretty big. Like, especially not everywhere, but especially the city that I grew up in, Auckland.
Okay.
Yeah, the community is like big enough. Like you will, you know, find some Indians on the street. Like, so it's not like just completely isolated from that, which was nice.
Right.
Are there a lot of Indian officials or government officials in New Zealand?
No, so that's actually something that I've been working on with a few other colleagues. So we have formed an Asian public sector network. So it
Oh.
incorporates anyone who identifies as being from an Asian background.
Mhm.
And because basically like policy, and particularly where the capital is, like it's not a very diverse, ethnically diverse city of New Zealand. And so, yeah, you know, like for Asian people or for ethnic minorities, like being in the community is really important. So basically few people are recruited into jobs that were actually making policy, influencing the future of New Zealand. And so we're doing a bit of advocacy and awareness raising through that network within New Zealand about how we need to, improve and increase the amount of Asian New Zealanders who are making decisions for the country, because like a quarter of Auckland is Chinese or Indian, like as Asian, you know?
Wow.
So it is
So they need to represent. They need to be represented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real, yeah. Right.
exactly. Exactly. So I've been doing quite a lot of advocacy work with colleagues. I mean, I'm in Mexico, but I try and do as much as I can from overseas. But we're really trying to make sure that there are more Indians and other Asian New Zealanders and New Zealanders of all ethnic backgrounds who can be at an embassy or be at an international meeting and say, I'm really proud of being a New Zealander from X background.
Right. And are you very proud of being a Kiwi?
I mean, I am. I'm very proud. I'm very, very happy to be here. But it doesn't come without its challenges.
Like the lifestyle in New Zealand, it's like, I mean, most of the people, would you describe them as like happy people? Like,
Yeah, I think so. It's a very laid back.
mhm.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I've been to Singapore many times, so I can like compare it to Singapore and compare it to Mexico City. Like, just remove all the hustle bustle. Like,
Okay.
And a lot of
That sounds like
nature.
paradise then.
Yeah. Very
really
relaxing.
chill, really lots of nature. So, you know, even if you're in a city, like you could walk and be in the bush and be hiking.
I mean, you know,
Nice.
our Aussie friends, they have a whole different vibe than Singaporeans do. Like they are a lot more chill, a lot more relaxed.
Yes.
Their tempo is different, and I think if we want to compare Australia and New Zealand's probably another level. Right.
Yeah, New Zealanders go to Australia for like big city get holidays, you know? Like, I mean, the chill is super nice, but at the same time, like, pros and cons, everything pros and cons, right? Like, for example, a friend from Buenos Aires, he is in New Zealand right now. He just flew a couple of days ago, and he's loving being back because he did an exchange year here, like over 10 years ago. And so he's obviously loving being back. He's at the beach, but he did send me a voice note saying, like, Amiga, like, the city is really quiet, no? Like, it kind of feels like an old person's like home.
It's a retirement place.
Like, well, I mean, you're comparing it to Buenos Aires, like,
Your tone, yeah, I think that.
yeah. So,
Yeah, we are also city people, right? Because we're from Singapore, a huge island city, and then we definitely felt more comfortable in Mexico City compared to when we first arrived and we were in I started in Mexico at Tlalnepantla. It was
Oh.
weird for us. It was weird for us there. So
Yeah.
we like came to live
Just because
in
there's less
the city.
hustle and bustle.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we like to be in the thick of action of the action.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, cities are really liberating. Like for me, moving to one of the biggest cities in the world from a city of 200,000, which is the capital of New Zealand, like I always joke that the population of Iztapalapa, right, which is a suburb of Mexico City,
Right.
is bigger than all of New Zealand.
Yeah, that is true.
And I tell that to Mexicans just so they can like understand the scale of like how small New Zealand is, like population-wise. And I think there's something liberating about being in a city like Singapore or like Mexico City. Like you can kind of be whoever you want. Like there's this anonymity.
Yeah.
Can't say that word in English. There is, you guys are musicians, and I also love music. I love exploring different artists and different genres and dancing. Like you can be somewhere new every weekend and be discovering something really cool.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that in small places.
In small places or in some other cities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you kind of need a certain way or feeling to kind of plug into to what's going on, and that's kind of what we love about Mexico also.
Yeah.
The fact that there's a lot going on, and
like the truth is like being here during the pandemic, I think it was one of the best places to be at, because there were, I mean, like for example, like some of the other countries, they have extreme restrictions, and it was definitely super isolating. But in Mexico, like what you said, like as long as you're outdoor, you can still go out and like do things.
Absolutely. And also something that was interesting, because I went to the US for the first time with my family like last month.
Okay.
And I went to like big cities, right? Like LA, San Francisco. Can't say I'm an expert at all, but something I also noticed is that like Mexico City has such a unique energy and vibe, and I'm sure you guys can fully relate to this. Like,
for sure,
it's so different to other big cities as well. Because even though there's a lot going on, it's hustle bustle. There's also this kind of like vibe and flow, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. And I felt quite overwhelmed in somewhere like LA. Like I felt really like, oh my god, and I don't feel like that here, unless I'm in some like Saturday tianguis in the centro or something,
Right.
There's I think it's a kind of a freedom that you feel, and I don't know, this is just a theory, right? I feel like that people kind of let you be here more, like they give you your own space, so
maybe like a less judgy kind of vibe, right?
Yeah, something like that, no?
Even though we're in a big city, and like in Singapore, like people are pretty critical with each other, because we are jam-packed, so many people, and everyone's like in a competitive vibe, like what you mentioned earlier. But like in Mexico, you can just dance around. Nobody's gonna bother so much. You can do weird things,
and that's it. Okay.
You can just do whatever you want. Like something that I remember was, I don't like attention. I don't dress up for Halloween and stuff. But I was forced to go to this Halloween party, and I did. Like I dressed up. I like made my hair easy. Had fake blood like all over my face and my neck, and it looked kind of like a Halloween costume. But I had to take an Uber to where this party was going to be, and it was like right on Reforma, and I was like waiting for my friend on Reforma, and she was late. So I was just standing there looking like an absolute crazy person, and everyone walked past, and like, I mean, people kind of looked obviously, but no one said anything,
Like they're looking, but they're not really thinking that you're weird or anything. I think they're probably just like, okay, she's in costume, because there's people in costume all the time, like here.
No, but even if they are thinking you're weird, it's like it's cool. There's like okay, this person is being weird, and then it ends there. You feel it. I guess we're speculating, right?
Yeah.
The judgment ends there, right? You can see the judgment ending there, right?
Right, and then like meanwhile in Singapore, or like in maybe other first world countries, when the people think you're weird, they're looking at you up and down, like, what
Yeah, I would never do that in New Zealand. But I mean, also there's a bit of a foreigner privilege. Like we're not from here because obviously, a lot of people from here come from quite religious families, or that we might maybe some certain expectations on women. That luckily, us being foreigners, we're a little bit kind of exempt from that. Like, okay, yes, she's a foreigner, she can kind of do what she wants. Yeah.
So we have to end already. Production's already informing us. Do you have any final words to say to the audience?
Before we get to that, also I wanted to ask one last question. Also, we have.
Okay, we can end with the last question.
And then maybe we can lead into your thing. This whole thing about, I'm sure people want to know this whole the kind of diplomat's life, right? There's always this question and this kind of feeling that, okay, so you are kind of exempt from the normal rules that other people need to abide by, right? Like, okay, that's a serious question. A lighter way to put it is kind of like, maybe you want to share something, or for people who might be interested, like to know about that side of life as a diplomat.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to finish, actually. I try not to talk about it too much, but it's very true. We do have certain privileges and immunities, they're called, P's and I's, where, we everything is organized for us. I get to live in a very nice house and pay a small contribution towards that. I can't get arrested. That's always nice. But obviously, my government tells me I need to follow the law at all times. I have diplomatic plates on my car, which means that, I basically can't get pulled over by corrupt police wanting a mordida or something like that. So, there are a lot of really special benefits that I think we're really lucky to have, but also it's very clear to us from our government that we shouldn't abuse those things, and we should be really grateful for them because they're not forever. As soon as I finish here and I move back to New Zealand, they're all gone. If I ever want to come back here on my own, obviously I'm a normal person. I think being a diplomat is something that is a really special experience, and I feel grateful for it, but it's also something that we need to not abuse and respect, and and not kind of rub it in people's faces, be really kind of understanding about that. So I just like to end. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me on your show. I think it's a really special place. Actually, last couple of days I was watching all of your previous shows with your guests, and you have such cool creative people, and you've got me as a government official on your
Yes.
Next time I'm going to become a musician. Next time I'll come as a musician.
Totally. We're gonna hold you to that.
But and just for the people listening and to my words, if there's anything that interested you or anything that ideas that you might want to talk about a little bit more about that you thought were interesting to you, then I'm really happy for you to reach out to me. I think I've shared my Facebook with you guys, so you can tag me. But I'm really keen to engage with the expat community here and share our stories. So thanks for the opportunity to let me tell my story.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. We loved having you, and we're going to sign out right now. I'm Celestine Angel.
I'm Alysha Bagasra.
And we are activating your senses on That Foreign Show. Peace out.
Thank you to all who joined us here on That Foreign Show. It's been awesome. I'm Celestine Angel.
And I'm Isaac Crouch, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a great weekend, y'all.
Entrando por tus oídos hasta llegar al centro de tus emociones, ADR Networks está en este momento
activando tus sentidos. That Foreign Show.